She's great.
Can't think of her name right now.
Okay, it's our Water and Sewer Committee meeting. It's June 14th. And we'll go ahead and have a motion to accept the agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept it.
Larry, for a second.
I'll second.
Any other comments? All those in favor? Sure.
I'm not sure what protocol is. I'm not a part of the committee, but I'd like to address the committee.
Any particular subject or?
Yes. I'm the guy.
Let me just go ahead and take care of a couple things and we'll
Absolutely.
make sure we hear from you, okay?
Yep.
All right. All in favor, signify by saying aye. There's a copy of the May 10th meeting minutes there, so I make a motion, we approve those. Is there a second?
Second.
Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed, same sign, that's approved. We just went through a couple items on the contract, the wastewater treatment plant. Things you may have heard before, but it's pretty general, so.
Yeah, little update that's in the packet too, both the council packet as well as this packet.
I don't need. All right, thanks, Joe. All right, well, we'll have this gentleman, why don't you just come before, just share your comments, and
I'm Neil
engineer
Miller.
can help you too.
I'm Neil Miller, and my wife and I are building a house in Orinoco on First Street Northwest. We're the people that you guys decided were not appropriate to put in the lift station and grinder. The house was standing there when you guys made this decision. I don't know that anybody drove by and looked, but there is a house there. You've listed this as undeveloped. It certainly had to be developed to put the house there. We are the only house on that street that was denied a lift station and grinder. And I'd like you to reconsider that vote.
So I'm not familiar with, I'm familiar with the property, but I'm not familiar with when the house was started or what was the time frame for when.
Well, you awarded, the city awarded us a building permit last summer. They worked through the winter. And it was at the last meeting that you denied us the grinder and lift station. At that time, the structure was up. Things had been developed, and I have yet to see what the Orinoco description of developed and undeveloped is. And we were assured by the city of Orinoco, not this group in particular, when we were considering buying the property, that sewer and water be, brought into us. Nobody said we'd have to put in several $1,000s worth of grinder and lift station. And since it's being put in all down the street, I'd like you to reconsider that vote.
I know there was, I believe Joe, is our city engineer, and I believe he's responded to with some
yes,
initial
I have-
comments.
I have those notes, but it was an optional vote. If it was a developed property, it was automatically put in. In an undeveloped property, this committee had the option to include us.
Well, there was, I know there's, I appreciate your comments. I know there's a time frame when we were applying for the bonding bill money
Yes,
with the properties back in 2020 and 2021. And that's when we did the determination on our developed and undeveloped. And it's my impression that when we went to the PFA for the funding and we had open houses, and I believe you've seen probably the Q&A questions regarding the timing and everything of the February 2021. And I think that was one of the key, but there's also some other dates before that, that we, at that time, determined what was developed and undeveloped. And that was all part of identifying the number of grinder stations that we needed to use the state bonding bill funding for.
well, I repeat,
But I'm not
you guys-
sure if that,
You guys voted on it last month.
yes, sir.
Well, I guess I could clarify that for everybody's benefit. I saw an issue potentially, knowing that the property owner might not be happy with the city's policy and wanted to bring it
Imagine that.
to, well, absolutely, I get it.
Yep.
But, in what was it? The winter of 2020, we were going through a process and developing a policy of what would be included, how we'd be treating developed and undeveloped lots. That policy was drafted in a memo form and was incorporated into a feasibility report that was later authored and essentially approved by the, not essentially, approved by the city council and then presented to the public at not one, but 2 public hearings. And then also provided to the Public Facilities Authority. And that information essentially was used to fund the project. And so these processes have been ongoing for quite some time. Now, I did bring it to the committee's attention because the council does have the ability to change their mind and change policies as they see fit. But I wanted to, again, be transparent and try to be proactive and show people, committees, council, issues that, might kind of come back and questions could be asked. And so there are policies in place. We talked about it at the last Sewer and Water Committee meeting. I don't know that you necessarily had to vote on anything, but I did ask for essentially consensus or direction as to whether you wanted to change course from the policy that you'd adopted, or this, not you, the city had adopted, several years ago. And, obviously there are ramifications to policies and people kind of fall on both sides of those. And, that's unfortunate. Obviously, everybody would like to provide service to, all of the residents to the greatest extent possible, but there are ramifications with funding and costs and, following protocols and policies too. So, where you want to fall in that is up to you, but I'm just trying to.
Well, according to this, the consensus of the committee, that's you guys, was that we were not included.
Right.
That's in your notes.
So, and I'd also forward you a copy of the feasibility report that contains, the policy that talks about how we determined who would be served and who wouldn't. And if you look at both of those documents.
It talks about developed and undeveloped.
Yep.
I think the key thing is timing, right? I don't think that cutoff in timing, that was not last month. It was perhaps a year or more ago.
Right.
And
The project was certified in June of a year ago, right?
And what did we,
21.
what did we discuss was kind of the demarcation, kind of the before and after, the black and white. Was it the submittal of the documentation to the state, or was it contract signing? I don't recall, but we'd kind of decided that there has to be a point at which we stop, the city stops paying for lift stations. And it was at that point, and I can't recall what that date
I really
was.
think that's probably the certification of the project by the MBCA. So we take the plans and specs and we submit those to the PCA, and the PCA certifies it. And after the certification is done, then all the funding components can start to be realized and finalized.
So it was at that point.
That's what I would think would be a reasonable spot, or the feasibility report before that.
Decision was, or determination was made.
And I'm gonna come back to it again and say, why was it the consensus of the committee at last month's meeting to leave our house out?
It wasn't the consensus at the last meeting to leave it out. It had already been left out. It was a consensus to not recommend to council to put it into the
The
project.
consensus of the committee is that state grant loan funds will not supply grinder and low grinder system at this location.
Because the state funds only gave us money for properties that were developed at the time that we submitted. So we don't have money to supply to properties that aren't developed at that time. And we had this conversation, if you want to look back two years into our notes,
He sent us notes.
but you can look back, because we had this conversation and I probably was frustrated about it. Like, we have these people who are going to be buying property and they're not going to be included in the project. And the question is, for how long do we leave those open? And we can't buy a grinder station for a property that doesn't have a house on it. Or-
When did you buy the grinder stations? Have they been purchased?
They've been funded by the state of,
Yeah, I
of Minnesota,
understand
and
that.
that's the issue.
Well, all I can say is that the city of Orinoco said we'd have coverage, and that's why we bought the lot.
So do you have documentation on who you talked to, what was said, when that
It was
conversation
pretty
happened?
casual conversation, but we bought the lot last summer.
And to be clear, you do have sewer and water service
Yeah. But
to
we can't
your
use-
lot line.
but we cannot use it because we aren't connected. Yeah, so am I gonna run up to the street to open a tap or go to the bathroom? I don't think so.
Right, but if you buy almost any lot within any city, the city doesn't come in and plumb it to your house. That doesn't happen. With the exception of the grinder stations on this project as a function of the funding.
I'm gonna
In which it
repeat my
allowed
first
us to do.
statement, and that is, I'd like the committee to reconsider. With that, thank you.
Sir, can I just ask you one other question? So I am also part of the city council as well as being on this committee. If in fact we reconsider and go to the full council and say, we recommend that we
Yes,
supply service or pay for the grinder station with the state funding. Do you have a recommendation for us as to when we stop allowing that? So let your property is being built today. All of those houses on that street are, we're already in the project, so they
Yes.
already had funding. What if a year from now, after all of you already have your service, there's another house that gets built? Do we supply that also? Or do we,
I don't
what's your
know. I
recommendation?
don't know. I wouldn't think so.
So,
But in my wife's and my opinion, our house was underway when this decision was made. And you're telling me it was made long ago,
when did you buy your lot?
July?
July of last year, or
Yep.
2021.
Yep.
So I will look back in our notes. I will do this before our next council meeting, and I will pull all the documentation that shows when we had the discussion on if we were purchasing grinder stations for undeveloped lots, and what did that mean? So that I can have a clear conscience of, we made this
Well-
decision well before you purchased your land.
That's not what it says in the notes.
The consensus was more taking the position of qualifying water policies
Well,
itself.
According to the notes I got from Mr. Balin, it said that the committee had the option to provide to undeveloped properties.
And the
And
committee,
you're considering my property undeveloped. And that was as of the May meeting, unless I misunderstood yours.
Like I said, the council has the option to do lots of things. If they want to change course on a policy that they've set, that's their option. They can do that. They have that option.
And our house will be complete this summer. The sewer won't be done till next year. Correct. So consequently, we'll have water, but gee whiz, what are we gonna do with it? So, thank you for your time.
thank you for your
Thank you.
time. Okay, for Joe and Laurie, we just finished, go back to our agenda, and we're right at phase 1A, talking about Fitzgerald Construction Contracts 2 and 3 update.
Right, and maybe just the last item on the contract one is we did meet and selected the brick, water table and grout colors. Did you see that, Lori? We can all go back maybe afterwards and look at them again. I do think that, we did submit that stuff. I'm presuming that they've been ordered. But if we have, we can all look at it. If there's a concern, we can attempt to address it. That might be a good after meeting discussion, unless you guys want to do it now.
Let's finish our agenda.
Larry likes to look at that.
No.
So. All right, so Fitzgerald, Burbank stabilization, construction. What remains there is the turf restoration, the removal of the temporary driveway and planting the trees for about the 4th week in a row, I've talked to the contractor about that. They did have somebody on site. Must have been Monday, prepping for seed. I'm imagining it's a kind of a wet mess down there right now, but they do have bales down there. They do have equipment. And they do have done some prep work. In addition to that, they'd indicated that the contractor wants to, they have a subcontractor. I think it's a contractor out of the cities that are doing all the tree plantings, and they would be coming in next week to complete the tree plantings. And the reason this is kind of a critical path item is, well, we've got the access between the houses there, and the one undeveloped developing property is gonna sod their yard probably next week or the week after. And so I've been pushing them to get essentially done as much as they can get done, so then they don't have to disturb that home, and it's just better for everybody. So we've been pushing on that. So hopefully we'll continue to make some progress in a timely manner there. The contractor continues to install force main and gravity sewer south of the lift station. They're making slow but steady progress in that route. And then in addition to that, the contractor continues to work on First Street Northwest between the West End and 9th Avenue. At this point, all the force main is in. Most of the sanitary sewer, most of the water main is in, with the exception of maybe the last 250 feet near the top of the hill. There is a gas main that runs parallel to the water main, and it was running kind of parallel to the trench, and then all of a sudden it moved into the trench. And then you get to the top of the hill and it moves out of the trench. And so it wasn't located correctly when the surveys were done. It wasn't located correctly when we were under construction. And so the gas company is coming in to relocate that, hopefully the end of this week or early next week, and then that'll get done. But what the contractor's done is pulled back and started extending the sewer and water service to the lots. And so I would guess after the end of next week, they might have the utilities close to done or done, and they'll start to pull back and reconstruct the road. Right now, it is a wet mess out there. Steep hills, a lot of rain, kind of a difficult situation. The residents have been patient, in my opinion. And then Ellingson continues to work on water main installation. They've completed the directional drill underneath they installed the casing under Trunk Highway 52, installed the water main from that casing underneath the river up to 5th Street. And then they're working on the first half, or the west half of the 5th Street water main install. That'll be done via directional drilling. They're just finishing reaming out that pipe now. And they'll, weather permitting, start pulling the 14-inch pipe in tomorrow. So that process is going reasonably well. Didn't find any more surprises, at least significant surprises in terms of the drilling. That's always a concern, because you just never know. There is a resident update that went out. Kind of details a lot of this and what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks. We do have a pay request for Fitzgerald. The pay request for Fitzgerald totals $2,072,885. That's a big pay request given the amount of work that they've gotten done. About $1.722 million of that $2.07 million pay request is material on hand payments. And so that 13 truckloads of pipe that you see sitting on the hill there is essentially what we're paying for. And in this day and age, you can't buy material and have it come little at a time. You either buy it and pay for it, or you don't get it. And so allow the contractor to kind of cash flow things. We pay material on hands. And so that took a fair amount of effort in kind of reconfiguring the pay request to make that happen or facilitate that, but I think we accomplished that goal. So that'll go on the council pay request for next Tuesday. And I guess the last thing on my agenda, or the, thing that maybe we're all thinking about, is schedule and contractor productivity. I've had some discussions with the contractor about, I kind of see their crews are, they're running 2 crews. They've threatened to have a 3rd crew in town for about a month and a half now. We haven't seen that 3rd crew. And the 2 crews that they are running are not staffed like, in my opinion, you would staff a very efficient utility crew. They're a person or 2 short. Everybody seems to be a person or 2 short nowadays, unfortunately. So I get that. That doesn't, looking at the productivity that we've seen to date, I'm concerned that we're not going to make it. And so we will have a meeting with the contractor. I'm thinking next Thursday to discuss that. Maybe Kane would come, and Ryland, if you want to come, or you guys can come, anybody that wants to come too. But I was thinking next Thursday morning, give the contractor a little bit of time to prepare, and we'll have an adult discussion about what is or isn't happening.
So when you say not gonna make it, you're talking like fall of next year, not gonna make it,
Well,
or just milestones for this year?
there's not a milestone. Well, there is a milestone for this year. The milestone for this year is everything you disturb, you put back in payment.
Yeah.
Right? And then the next big milestone is really, the infrastructure that's necessary to service the grinder stations are in play and in service. And so that means essentially all of the outfall line from the wastewater treatment plant, all of the major lift stations, most of the force main, and everything that connects those, everything that runs through those areas, because when we go to connect a grinder station, it has to be live that day. It has to have somewhere to go. And that deadline, I think, is about July, is about a year from now.
Is there any liquidated damages or anything in the contract?
There is.
that- okay.
There it is. I don't know that they need to be reminded of that.
Yeah, usually they don't forget that part.
But we will remind them of that, definitely.
Are they significant?
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, sometimes it's cheaper
Thousands
to
of
pay the
dollars a day.
damages.
Thousands of dollars a day.
I've run into typically 2,500.
There's a schedule that we go by based on the project size. Same schedule that MnDOT uses. So that's what we kind of use. Anything on the 2 projects before we move on?
Has anybody talked about price increases, either inflationary or fuel or?
Everybody's talking about price increases and
I just-
inflation.
I bet they haven't asked for more money yet, but they're warming us up. Is that?
Fitzgerald asked if there's a fuel escalation clause in the contract, and there is not. We have weekly discussions with Staub about, getting things ordered, and, every shop drawing they send us, they want back in 3 days. It just doesn't happen, and they talk about, materials increasing. Well, yeah. We know that everybody's kind of pushing as hard as you can, but it's happening all over. Diesel fuel prices are really hard on contractors. Trucking costs are up, delivery costs are up, material, everything's up. So
Garbage collection's up.
it is, I'm sure it is.
Yeah, fuel prices.
I'm sure they got a fuel escalation clause.
There's diesel fuel surcharges are adding it.
I think the key thing is that it's better to, be aware of those than if, sometimes contractors will try to cut corners to save, to control their costs. And that is undesirable. Right, because you don't catch those things until they're gone. And then it's 2 or 3 times the amount of money to fix it. So.
Yeah, that is the constant challenge that you facing when we have this type of environment, it's just heightened. We talked about the resident construction update. I did make some modifications. I think we talked about update 2, we're on update 4. I did make some modifications to try to add some text and simplify the language. Hopefully that was successful. Are there any suggestions on how to further improve what we have here? I know it's longer than I think we all would like, but I just feel like there's certain things that need to be said, even though they don't apply to a lot of people.
Like the information box up front too.
Yeah. And they're on the, at least we have one over on West First, well, it's on 9th Avenue right now.
I think the bullet form helps, or the numbered paragraphs kind of helped. In your summary comments, they're trying to minimize those, but still hit the high points of, which is good.
So we'll obviously continue to refine it a little bit. But, hopefully the information is getting out there. Our email list is over 200 people now, which is helping. The sign up rate is slowing down dramatically though. So I guess people that want it or have seen it are getting it.
I guess if there's any, if you're asking for comments, because these are going out to specific people, except for people that pick them up in general. The first 2 paragraphs, you may just want to put at the end of your comments, just because important things are the 1 through 9.
Oh,
Not necessarily the first 2 paragraphs, but that's just editorial comment. Review of recent construction is what they want to know, so I think that's.
right. Yeah, we can do that, especially now that people kind of have the gist of what these are about. Makes sense. Amazing how fast 2 weeks goes by.
One thing about the
Set down
SBR,
another one.
the SBR concrete, all those samples came back okay, or do we know yet? Testing samples of the loads and concrete
Oh, we're getting samples back all the time. Every pour we're pulling
Nothing's
samples.
appeared out of the line or,
No,
okay, good.
no. I haven't really seen any major issues. And so we break cylinders at different intervals to make sure that the concrete compressive strength is there. We've had AET out a number of times there, with every major excavation, they're looking at some subgrade cells. AET is our geotechnical engineer and our materials testing firm. So they running gradations and doing some testing. So, I think that gets us to the PFA signage quote.
So I was trying to remember if we shared. So I believe you guys have seen or just review of what we are proposing for a sign. And I did get a quote back. Went back to, you guys want a copy of this? So I did go back to Chad Tracy and ask for if there's something they could do with better material, cheaper, more inexpensive material. And they came back with the same, basically the same quote as what we had before. For 3 panels, and if we want 1, 2, or 3, we just divide by 3. 1, 2, or 3 of these panels. They're 4x8 sheets. Okay.
What are they made of?
Some type of ACM panels. I'm not sure exactly it. Okay, back. The quote expires 6/18. I sent a note to Molly, Chad Tracy, because our council meeting's on the 21st, asking her, of course, if this would be still appropriate for approval, whatever we decide to do. at our council meeting next Tuesday night. So I did ask specifically about some different type of material to cut the cost and because we told them, like, it was a temporary 1, 2 year, 3 year, whatever, they weren't forever, so still came back with the same quote. So if we do each individual one, it's
$662.
622.
$662.59 you have on the agenda.
Discussion, I would think we would want to consider 2, possibly 1 down at the wastewater treatment plant and then 1 here someplace around the community center. Third one be oversight on the west side of town someplace, but
Ryland,
discussion.
if
Yes.
we didn't have to do this, would you still think we needed 3 signs saying that we're doing this?
Well, we need to do
We need
at
1.
least 1,
Mhm.
right, to meet the PFA requirements of advertising the clean legacy money funding and PFA funding and everything that's on that. Sure, so we can get by with 1. I just throw that out where would be the appropriate place for it. What's that?
We have to provide all the mounting and installation and so on, or just.
We have Kane put on a couple of seal posts.
Sandwich board man standing on.
So the requirement is just for 1. Wherever the appropriate best place for that to get the best exposure. No doubt the exposure would be better here by the community center than up by the treatment plant.
Yeah.
That's true.
I
Well, I
would,
think there's a lot of traffic out there. People drive out there.
Yeah,
just-
there's a lot of traffic
just
out there.
look.
yeah, I would
All
go
the
with
cement
1.
drivers want
I
to see
think
it.
if we're trying to cut costs, it doesn't make any sense to up our budget by 3 times to get something that we have to do, and we only have to have 1 of them. Doesn't make sense to me.
Other comments?
I guess I agree with Lori.
There might be some political flexibility though, if the sign's visible here. You know, it's not us deciding what's gonna happen, you know, this whole thing is part of a federal and state funded program.
Will that sign
I
get
don't
vandalized
quite
potentially?
follow your comments, but the political aspect of
People
it.
don't, so it's.
Then we'll just we'll buy another one for $600. If it doesn't get vandalized, it'll blow down and break in 2 some point. I mean, this is a 2-year project, right? So but if you put 1 up and it blows away, maybe you don't need to buy a second one. Just like we had 1. I don't know, it's gone now.
Gotta take a picture.
Yeah.
Send it to PFA. Here's your sign.
Strong feelings, one way or the other. I'm okay with 1, 2.
You put it on the corner.
Well, we can work with
Necessarily.
Kane.
I mean, a corner up where
That's by the community center
I mean.
or by the sign that's out there.
At the end of the road, not at the end of the road where the plant is, but where,
Minnesota Avenue.
yeah, where Minnesota Avenue tees off and the dirt road goes straight and then put it there.
Oh, on Hunter Street?
Yeah, you don't put there.
We don't have any city property there other
Well,
than
that's true. That's all county right
It's
away.
windier.
all county township, so.
It's windier. Well, that might fulfill your.
We don't give the township too much credit for it.
No.
Yeah.
Kidding.
I just think it would be better right here at the community center.
I think so.
I agree. I move, we recommend the purchase of 1 sign for installation at the community center.
A second. It.
If Shot Tracy wants to give us a 20% discount, they can put their logo on it too.
I'll see how I'm doing that day.
Hmm.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll, all those in favor of the one sign, and we'll put it out here on the corner someplace. Sign. Signify by saying aye. Aye, pose same sign. That's approved. I'll share that tomorrow with Molly. Okay, groundbreaking. It was a rainy day. It was a rainy morning, beautiful afternoon. So there's, it was, people that wanted to be there were there, and we appreciate everybody that did come out, and Senator Sun Jim spoke, and myself and Joe shared a lot of detailed information. And so it's well received by Staub, the comments I got from Staub. I never really, didn't talk to Gary to speak of. He was there, of course, in the picture, so.
So I was just gonna mention, Staub had a drone on the site
Oh, yeah,
last week on a nice, beautiful sunny day, and they had a photographer there, and they took a lot of nice pictures. And they did share that with us.
yeah. And it's, I was gonna get one video is 700 meg. The other one is, it's there's gigabytes in it, let me put it that way. But there are some photographs. So I have been going back and forth with Pete at Zimbrota News Record, and he finally sent me the picture I was asking for, and that's the one that was in the bottom of the newspaper. It's a color picture with the byline underneath and everything. So I got that yesterday afternoon, so I'm gonna send that out to our committee, all the attendees, everybody that was invited. I have listed everybody, so I was gonna send that out, and of course, share that with Fitzgerald, Staub, and Schumacher too, so thanking them for their appreciation. So you'll see that here, and council members too, hopefully the next day or so.
Does the city have a YouTube account?
Well, as far as the movie, yeah, we can use, there's the video that we're talking about, we may, yeah, we could put it on YouTube. They asked if we could use it as we're liking the movie from the drone. He's got one drone of showing the SBR building being poured with all that 850 yards of concrete. That's kind of interesting. And the bigger video, I have not opened it up because it takes 45 minutes to download it, and I didn't want to really spend that much time, so I haven't looked at it yet, but I will. And they had a couple pictures too. I know they took more pictures, but I haven't seen those either, but
If you have the information, I'd like to, if it's just a download link, I'd like to see those.
what's that?
If you have the, like, if it's just a download link and you could pass that information along, I'd like to see those.
Sure, yeah, no, yeah, it's like.
I think it's on a SharePoint site, so.
Okay. You want to do that? You can have that capability of Stantex linked and everything. You want to do
Well, I
that?
think it's Staub's, they've got it all linked up, so I'll just forward you the email.
Sure.
Just gotta remember.
So it's posted, it's not.
Yes.
Ross Parker intended to be to that groundbreaking ceremony too, but he was a week late, I think.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
You probably picked a better day.
There was a few people there, probably not the people he's looking for.
He got mixed up.
Really?
It went the next week.
Oh, that's too bad. Appreciate the thought, even if it was a week late.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else you want to circle back to? Mr. Beeler and his comments, I think there's been plenty of dialogue, and I thought it was not taken care of, but I thought it was understood that it was unfortunate, the timing didn't work out. At least that was my impression of the earlier conversation, but maybe there.
Yeah, they just tore the house
But I
down.
think the consensus of our meeting was to agree that we had set a policy in place. And the consensus was we need to agree with the policy and that we made those decisions earlier. Timeline doesn't really, and the precedent, we talked about the precedent too, so.
And the PFA funding is,
The only thing that I would say, and you all know, I have this soft spot for serving this community. I feel like costs have changed, things have changed, pieces and parts that we have needed have changed, and they will continue to. And so if there is, maybe we need to reevaluate that timing of what undeveloped really means. Does it mean today, or does it mean a year ago, or does it mean prior to when those grinder stations, you know, are being ordered to put in? I don't know, I feel like we've talked about it so often, and it hits home when you have someone standing in front of you and their house is being built and we're a year away from even being able to do this. And costs are gonna change and parts are gonna change. And so last time, I think when we talked, you were like, well, we said we were gonna buy 80 of these or whatever it is. And if we keep adding, that's not really right. Yeah, but we also said we were gonna have poured walls, and we don't. We have panels. Different things are gonna come up and change. And so I feel like we should probably.
I think along with, if you want to reconsider that, the state's paying for those 85, right? The city's gonna pay for everyone after that. And so it's not just the state paying for this one. It's asking all of us, the 1,300 people that live here, to fund new
Everybody paying,
development. Yeah. And so I agree, it's unfortunate for him, but I think the line has to be drawn somewhere, and I'm comfortable with where it was drawn.
But at what point does the city start paying for him? Because he's gonna be assessed the same thing you are.
Correct, yeah. And I don't need a grinder station at all, but I'm helping pay for.
For everyone that does, that
Right.
was part of the funding.
So
So I
and then
think that's the question. When does the city start paying for?
the city, in my personal opinion, the city should never install a grinder station on our own. That should be a homeowner responsibility. And I think the fact that we are going to own and operate over 80 of them, I'm not comfortable with that. And so making that number even higher is, I wouldn't support it.
Two quick points. Everybody knows that there's an assessment, but we've also got to remember that assessment is a fraction of what it costs to serve each and every individual parcel. A fraction, like less than
20%, right?
Yeah, 25%, whatever that number is. And so that warrants some consideration. And I keep on coming back to PFA and what they fund and what the state is wanting to pay for. And they didn't give the city $33 million to subsidize new housing. They gave the city $33 million to serve existing residents with problems. That's the reality in my opinion.
And we've got to pay to decommission our septic systems and hook up to the property line piping too.
Yeah, and that's a cost that they don't have.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious how they're gonna occupy their home.
Right, they get a
That's
CO.
an interesting, yes, you don't.
Right, you don't get a CO.
Yeah.
And the exact same thing's happening 2 doors from me right now, where they've knocked that little 600 square foot house down. And, they did isolate the pipe, and it's a newer septic system. But, when are they gonna build there? And what do, how do we plan to put that?
So Joe, if I could ask you, I think this probably isn't the last conversation we'll have regarding a very similar instance as this, but I think it'd be good to have a cheat sheet, if you will, of the timeline with a 1 or 2 sentence date or comments behind that date of when the decision was made regarding these grinder stations. The funding was submitted to the PFA, basically that line we drew in the sand.
Yeah, and I did put the email
It's
together
probably-
to Mr. Miller and send it to him, and it contained essentially, I think, a bullet list of dates. Do you remember that? Am I imagining that? I think so. So I think that is what you're kind of asking
Okay.
for. If you.
Yeah, there was dates there.
And I think putting in, we, as this project, we asked for funding to fund this number. And during that time, we had conversations of this. I mean, I think bringing it back to council or bringing it back to this group, I think we have to have very clear understandings of, I mean, I guess the group can change, the council can change, but this is the decision, this is why it was made, this is how many we got funding for. We don't have funding for more of these. Or funding is funding and will, you know, up until X date, we will supply the homes that are occupied and, you know, livable with what they need to be connected, because it's our responsibility to connect our community to this system. So I think we just have to have everything really cut and dry. This is what it is.
So was it 14 undeveloped lots? That number sticks in my mind.
Oh, I think there's well more than 14. There's probably, well, you can see that they're all on the big numbers. Here's 6 of them right here, 7 of them on this one. There's another
Whatever that number is, it's
11, 14 on this one. There's another, 7 on this one.
okay.
So you start adding up, there's probably 40, I want to say.
So those are potential coming to council and asking for just what he's asking for.
Well, and look at Larry's house.
Going right down here, another lot.
He gets gravity sewer, but we're putting it to your lot line.
Yeah.
He has to pay to, so just like that property owner, it's a different type of service. But it's brought to your lot line, it's brought to his lot line. It's, there's a lot of ways to look at this.
And I
And
think that's why what Lori's asking her, I think that would help us in. We don't want to make it a black and white, but we want to have a pretty good idea why we made those decisions and
that's
the
the feasibility
definition,
report in that memo.
definitions of undeveloped lots and include that too. So the next council has that information too. It's the legacy is there. So why we did what we did.
And literally, that's the feasibility report. I mean, if you look at the back of the feasibility report, there's a 10 or 15 page memo that we talked about at length 2 years ago. That's the basis of the policy. That is the policy. Something for next meeting for people to think about. Camping World is asking if they can install a RV septic disposal station.
Can we talk about this?
Yeah. If they
Talked
want
about
to pay
that, how
to
much-
pay to truck it out of here.
Yeah.
We talked about it at the wastewater treatment plant, so this is different.
Oh.
This is at their site,
Yeah. Where you're
and it
transporting.
would essentially gravity flow.
Yeah, you're transporting
It's a
highly
straight pipe
concentrated
into the main,
Sewer.
more or less.
So they
Yes.
put it in holding tanks and they take it to Rochester because we won't accept it.
No, they want us to accept it.
Yeah, we made that decision way back.
At the wastewater treatment
Yeah,
plant,
it's at
not
the
at a,
treatment plant.
We
Not
just,
a
yeah, we
private
decided the
site.
city was not gonna install one at the plant. We did not.
Because it's highly concentrated.
Can we put this on our next month agenda?
yeah, that's why I said there's something to start
Yeah.
thinking about a little bit there. It just came across my desk yesterday and I,
Okay.
Well, it'll be the same with the other one too then.
Are those really separate business entities or are they
Yes.
just one?
No, they're
Well, they relate? Okay, I'm like, it's gotta be the same guy and they just have 2 different signs. No. Okay.
actually, I think they're all owned by campus or that Camping World now.
The top is separate.
Okay, well, I'm gonna motion to adjourn before we get off topic.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approved 7:30. Thank you.
Shove pipe under Highway 52.
Before I forget, Sunny. I'd like to introduce you to our Water and Sewer Committee. This is Sunny Schultz.
40 bank.
We hired her as an interim administrator. Kind of help us get organized and kind of help
Joe. That's Joe.
Jim too.
Sure, Harold, they want to do.
Larry, we met once.
Thank you, sir.
Good seeing you, Sonny.
Thank you for the question.
So they have a 20-inch bit, that wash it as you're going through, it chips out.
Oh, they have like, probably 28.
Right, and they push it right behind the bit.
Oh.
To keep it from.
So what they do is they'll drill through with the drill rod.
All right.
And then they'll pull back a reamer.
Okay.
And then, that first
Oh, they
one
just
might be, 10 inches, and then it might be 18 inches, and then it might be 24 inches.
You put a thimble on it. The other question is, splicing that PVC, that inch and a half, looks like outside, inch and a half wall diameter PVC laying in the park right now.
Using it, yep.
So I saw the machine and it obviously trues up the two ends. How do they heat